Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala barakatuh. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala syarafil anbiya wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Alhamdulillah, I have explained to you how the position of atheism is actually very weak and is getting weaker by the day, because more and more as we develop the new tools of science, from quantum physics to the structure of DNA and the system of cosmology that we understand today, and the new physics and so on, atheism is becoming untenable. So in the new science, I have explained to you how, for example, Professor Dr. John Polkinghorne, a prominent physicist, from atheism for 40 years, he became a believer. All right, and he believes in God. No doubt, if he has not known about Islam, he knows about Christianity. It doesn't matter. All right, but at least he is a believer. He's a theist. All right, and there are many scholars now who are going into that direction. In fact, among very prominent will be, I'll show you the video. All right, Francis Collins, one of the leaders of the Genomes Project, very prominent geneticist, and he says that it's impossible for life to exist by chance. It's not just a simple idea of Darwinism and so on. Maybe there is, all right, for example, a change in terms of the shape and color and so on, but it is not the abrupt change that we see that makes Darwinism almost impossible. That first life to exist almost impossible, or even ridiculously not possible at all. So I'm going to give you how this human experiences, where he says that I do not believe that I shift in some strange intellectual way when I move from science to religion. So now more and more top scientists are coming to religion. So as Muslims, this must be an assurance for us, all right, to know that what we believe is everlasting, and what belief in Islam of the Creator, Allah, through the understanding of Tawheed and Islamic metaphysics, is very, very true. It is the truth. وَقُلْ جَالْ حَقُّ وَزَحَكَ الْبَاطِلِ إِنَّ الْبَاطِلَ كَانَ زَهُوقًا. The truth shall triumph and falsehood shall perish. So Islam tells about the transcendent Creator, which I've explained to you, and the Quran tells us that we are only to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I'm going to give you the two videos about how life can exist, and it can only exist by creation, by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He gives the command, innama amruhu iza arada shay'an ayakula lahu kun fayakun, and the whole process started. And you can see the fantasticness of this process, inshallah, and understand what Professor Francis Collins says about the nature of the language of God, inshallah.
Elegantly simple complexity. One connection we have to every other living thing is our cellular makeup. Within each cell is a world of complexity that boggles the imagination. It's hard to fathom how the structures, machines, transportation, communication, and manufacturing could possibly work. And it does it seamlessly and effortlessly at a level of complexity and detail that defies explanation. This video is designed to reveal a hint of the cell's complexity. But more importantly, it will show that the cell could not have come about by natural causes. The initial step in making proteins is to transfer the DNA information to RNA. This process is called transcription. The process of transcription requires the perfect sequential binding of several proteins to the DNA. When the proteins are assembled in exactly the correct order and way, the process of making a protein begins when RNA polymerase takes off down the DNA strand. Coming into the RNA polymerase are the individual RNA building blocks, or nucleotides. Meanwhile, out of the RNA polymerase goes a string of RNA, an exact copy from the section of DNA. That section that is copied is called a gene, and it is used as the information template from which a protein is made. A strand of RNA made from the DNA is sent with the help of other proteins to a two-part molecular machine called the ribosome. This is where the translation takes place. We are looking now at how the amino acids are assembled to make a protein. The RNA string or gene provides the code for which amino acid is to be used. The amino acids are assembled in an exact order. If the order is wrong, it would be like dialing a wrong number on the phone, and the whole protein would not work. Even if the order is correct, the protein must also be folded into a specific shape, aided by protein molecular machines called chaperones. These chaperones are commonly barrel-shaped. The immaturely folded string of amino acids enters the chaperone and is folded into its proper shape. Then the chaperone releases the newly formed protein into the cell. So again, we see that the manufacture of proteins requires proteins. The ribosome, which synthesizes the amino acids, is partially made up of proteins. The chaperones, which fold and protect the proteins, are also made up of proteins. And, as was shown in the beginning of this video, the transcription process also requires numerous proteins. Therefore, the process for producing highly sophisticated protein machinery without the use of pre-existing proteins is not possible in any amount of time. The best explanation is that it was designed by God. God created organisms, insects, plants, fish, birds, animals, and humans fully formed. It's absolutely the best explanation of the available evidence. To learn more about evolution and the evidence for design, go to www.evidencepress.com.
So, Professor Collins, thank you very much indeed for coming along this weekend and speaking to us at this Golden Biology course. And as well as your background in sequencing the human genome, which has been going on now for many years, and for many other genomes as well of other species, you've also been writing, I believe, a very successful, well-selling book called The Language of God. And I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about what led you to actually write this book.
Well, I am a scientist. I've been fortunate to have the opportunity to lead this historic enterprise, to read out all the letters of the Human DNA Instruction Book, which is what the Human Genome Project did. And that's quite a milestone for humanity, having that information in front of us to begin to understand how life works and how we might use this for medical benefit. But I'm also a believer in God. I didn't get raised in that kind of a tradition, but actually in my 20s in medical school, encountering people who were facing death and seeing how their faith provided them with a strong rock of support, I got curious about what that was all about. And assuming that faith was all about emotional decisions and there was no rational basis to it, I figured I'd try to learn something about it. And to my surprise, after reading a number of authors who have put forward an intellectual basis for faith, particularly C.S. Lewis, I became convinced that the atheism that I had embraced was actually the least rational of all the choices, and that over a period of a couple of years, trying to learn more about what God would be like and ultimately discovering the historic person of Jesus Christ, I became a Christian. Now, some people say, oh, your brain must be exploding right now. You're a geneticist, you work on evolutionary features of our own DNA and that of other species. How do you put these things together? Do you have to compartmentalize them? Not at all. I find science is a way of exploring the natural world, but it has its limits. It can't answer some of those more profound questions like, why are we here? What's the meaning of life? Is there a God? Those are clearly not scientific questions, but they're awfully important. And perhaps there is an unfortunate rumor going around that the scientific worldview and the spiritual worldview have to be at loggerheads. I have not found that to be true in my own life. In fact, I can identify no conflict between what I know as a scientist, including all of the details of our own DNA sequence, and what I know about God, who created the universe, who put all of these opportunities in place and had a plan for you and me.
So actually, the language of God has all the things you've been talking about, but I think it's got quite a lot of science as well, hasn't it, as well as the side of religious faith?
Yeah, the language of God is a mix of an explanation of what science is teaching us about life, as well as about the history of the universe, wonderful things, many of which are fairly recently revealed, but also detailing my own personal spiritual journey, and then explaining how these things can all be harmonized in a way that I find enormously rewarding, satisfying, comforting, and yet which, especially in the current time where we have so many atheist manifestos on the one hand and fundamentalist Bible beating on the other, it would be hard for some people to believe that you could still find harmony. I have found that harmony. I know a lot of other people who have too, and this book was a way of describing the basis of that in an intellectually completely satisfying way without having to check your brain inventory.
And I believe it sold a lot of copies. It's been selling well, is that right?
I'm amazed. I thought maybe 10 or 12 people would read this, but it in fact is on the bestseller list for the 8th week after coming out in paperback this summer.
Excellent, yeah. Well, thank you very much, Professor Collins, for coming along for the course, and we greatly appreciate you being here.
Wonderful to be here.
Thank you.
So, okay, we have seen that how the creation of life needs a sophisticated machinery within our cell. And remember, our cell is one of a 10,000 of one hair. All right, it's a nano machine. It has the transporter, it has the replicator, it has the artificial intelligence system, it has the chaperone, it has everything. It's just like a universe of its own. It's one cell of your DNA, RNA, and how they can create new cells. Allah has created that, and it is so micro small that all these activities you see was taken and shown from an electron microscope. So life can only come about from protein, and protein can only come about with the will, the command of Allah. To have this protein existed, then that protein can replicate, then it can replicate you, me, the children of Adam, and for example, a butterfly, the species of butterfly, the fish, the species of fish, and so on, all going through the same process, having different genetic material. And the person that you saw who became a firm Christian, even though he's a Christian, but his language is that Francis Collins is the head of the Human Genome Project, all right, and also understood through this book, The Language of God, that it's impossible that life can exist by chance, that our existence is by chance. It is always by the command of God. So the language of God is where, for example, he created the RNA, DNA, and the whole complex RNA and DNA is so immense that it is impossible for it to even exist. Even a molecule of a bacteria also cannot exist. The DNA of a bacteria also cannot exist. Not to talk about the parts of the gene pool that we have. So inshallah, if we understand that, then our position in believing in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala should be verified. So we do not have to worry about, are we believing something that is real? It is real, and more people are coming to the fold of Theism, that means believing in God. But we as Muslims, we know we have the most perfect, the most truthful metaphysics of the nature of our existence vis-a-vis who created us, why we are on this earth, to be the sincere servant of Allah, to be His Khalifa on this earth. So always striving to make ourselves good, helping others to be good, and making the world good, inshallah.